Hi everyone, this is Tom Marutia, and welcome to an exclusive episode of Triple Threat. On November 7th, 2013, we had the honor and privilege to talk to Pink Floyd collaborator Ron Geesin about his new book, The Flaming Cow, The Making of Pink Floyd's Atom Heart Mother, and his history with the band. We all prepared questions, but unfortunately when the time came, only I got to do the interview since the other hosts were not able to join me. Nonetheless, the interview went off without a hitch, and we got such great responses and feedback from those who heard about it, so we are presenting it here in its entirety. A fair warning before we begin. This episode is being kept uncensored, as we want to represent our guest, Ron Geesin, exactly how he responded to our questions. So if you are listening to this episode without headphones, you may want to take precautions. With that said, we want to thank our very special guest, Ron Geesin, and his publishers for being so cooperative and taking the time to talk to us in what we hope will be an exciting episode of Triple Threat. Enjoy. I'm Tom Marutia, and we are Triple Threat, your all-talk and no-music show online. This week is Pink Floyd week, people, and we have a really exciting show for you. This show we're going to be talking about a book that has recently come out called The Flaming Cow, The Making of Pink Floyd's Atom Heart Mother. It is on the History Press by Ron Geesin. It is a very good read, and I'm very excited to say that we have on the phone with us the author of this book and fellow Pink Floyd collaborator, Ron Geesin. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Are we going out? This is kind of live then, is it?
Kind of, yes.
Kind of. I mean, it's delayed live.
Yes, it is delayed, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Right.
First of all, we want to say, I had the opportunity to read your book. I found it absolutely amazing. It was factual. It was humorous. It was sarcastic. It was everything that, I would expect. It's not a boring book. For those of you who are going to say, well, I don't really want to know how this 23-minute piece came together. Don't worry. With this book, it really will change your opinion on it. I have to applaud you for it, and we were gracious enough, to get a copy of it, and we thank you so much for coming to talk to us.
Okay, well, it's a great pleasure.
Right, I guess we'll get started with the first question then.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, you wrote this book in 2012, and it's just now published. Why now did you decide to write this book? Has there been any recent interest in Atom Heart Mother? Why now?
Well, two reasons why I wrote the book. No, actually, there are more than two reasons, but the straight reason was that I approached the History Press, which is in the west of England, with another book, which is a book that I've been working on for about 20 years, and it's the history of the adjustable spanner in the UK. Now, that's the spanner, of course, translated into the American, is wrench. So it's the history. It's the history of the adjustable spanner, which is just a therapy for me. But it's nothing to do with music. You can't connect music to it in any way other than design and form. But anyway, the History Press rejected the idea pretty damn quick, and but the main editor there was a Floyd fan, and he immediately noticed what I had done in the past, and he asked me if I would write the book. Now, I had not thought of doing that, but since it was all in my head, most of it, I had to check some facts. I just sat down and did it. That's how it happened. I suppose another reason is that eventually the story needed to be told, because I was getting more and more annoyed with poor reports and myths that were springing up. So I wanted to as far as possible, put the record straight. There you are.
Well, perfect. I guess a follow-up question, and this is a question for one of my hosts, is why did you name the book The Flaming Cow?
Right. Well, there is a term in England, probably not in America. The term is minced oath. A minced oath is you're going to swear violently, but you pull back. Now, let me give you an example. When somebody goes, it says sugar, they say. Well, they actually mean to say shit, right?
Right.
Okay, so the flaming cow is the fucking cow. Because it was in some ways a nuisance. It was a disturbance in my life, right? It was you could say it was a good disturbance, but it was still a disturbance, and that's why it was called. So that's why it's called The Flaming Cow. But it's quite a nice title anyway, because we all talk about. All human beings talk about burning something, or we love fireworks, we love conflagrations. That's just a long word for a fire, and stuff like that. So there's lots of meanings, but that's the main meaning.
Okay, and I probably should have said earlier, Ron, for those of you who are listening who don't know, Ron Geesin did work with Pink Floyd on the Adam Hart Mother Suite, and he's also famous for working with Roger Waters on the soundtrack to The Body. But before we get into that, Ron, I just want to, for those who maybe haven't had a chance to read this book or know about you, could you maybe give us a little background on how you became a musician and a composer? Because you had a pretty artistic upbringing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, self-taught, artistic upbringing, yes. Well, first of all, I was always a loner, that's to say, an individual who went about quite a lot on his own. I used to go on cycle rides in Scotland, where I was born, when I was a teenager. I used to go on cycle rides on my own. I didn't need anyone else to go with me. I just enjoyed going alone. And I got into music a very odd way, because I started playing the mouth organ, or if you want the posh name for it, harmonica, following after Larry Adler, the American virtuoso of the mouth organ. Now, he worked mostly in New York, but he then came over to England. I think there was a problem with the McCarthy regime, the communist sympathizers and all that. But because I got to know him later on. But what happened? Yes, I mean, the main thing for me was getting into jazz music. Because in England, at that time in 1960, 59-60, there was a big movement called revival, jazz revival. And you might have called it, over there you might have called it Dixieland, but Dixieland actually has a different meaning. It's also, the music's got a different feel to it. I got into the traditional jazz revival in England. I mean, I was playing the banjo in an amateur jazz band, and then I started teaching myself the piano with 3 fingers on each hand. The first 3 fingers, thumb and the next 2 fingers on each hand, playing the blues, because that's easy, because it's only 3 chords usually. And then I started collecting the original recordings of the great players from the 20s, all Afro-Americans, King Oliver, Louis Armstrong, Jelly Roll Morton, all them, and then I joined a jazz band professionally. I could hardly play I could only just play the piano. I didn't know quite if what was black notes and what was white notes. But I got through. I managed to get through, and I lasted 4 years with that band. We toured. We came over to the States at one point. It was in New York State mostly, but we went into Cleveland and Buffalo and across there. And then I went on my own, and all the time I was learning myself. I got quite early on. There was the jazz influence, which is still an influence with me, but it's got to be prototype jazz. It's got to be the originals from the 20s and 30s. And then I was also the other side was I was listening to all the great composers, and right up to Edgar Varese, even up to John Cage. But Edgar Varese was a big influence on me, and he was French, but he actually moved to New York and worked there. An amazing man, but he spent more time slagging people up, being rude to people at dinner parties in New York than he did composing, and that's how that's how it was. That's how I got into it all. I just got interested in good form. And I have to say that the one area of music that I don't listen to is pop, really. And rock. I don't listen to it. I don't find it amazing. I think what was that? I've forgotten the name of the group. Not the Who, but who was Freddie Mercury?
Oh, Queen.
Queen. Yeah. From the point. That's great. Thank you. There was a point when I ordered all the Queen albums from EMI in London because I enjoyed them. But there you go. That will do for that.
I guess an obvious follow-up question is how did you find yourself, for those who aren't listening, how did you find yourself in the Pink Floyd world, so to speak?
Because my live performance, which was I should describe as a Dadaistic eruption, fitted in places where they were playing. For instance, universities, gigs generally for the more intelligent side of youth. But I also worked in folk clubs, which Floyd obviously didn't. And then I was introduced to Nick Mason, I should put it around the right way. Nick Mason was introduced to me by a mutual friend. It was all to do with gigging around at the time. I was in Notting Hill, which was a wonderful creative, almost like the creative centre of London in the 60s. And I'd got myself into that area. So one was meeting fellow artists of all persuasions every day. There were poets, painters, the lot, everything was around there. And so it was a very rich time, and that's why Nick Mason came down to our old basement, and then we got on. And that's all in the book, of course. That bit, the meeting Nick Mason's all pretty accurately described there.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you do meet the others. And there was something in the book, kind of a very specific, that I wanted to talk about. You said that after you met the others, you described Richard Wright as very shy and gentle, but you mentioned in the book that you saw him backstage being rude to a fan. Do you remember what that was all about?
Yeah, I think expanding on that, I think he was. I didn't know this, but I think he was starting. He must have known that he was getting ill, and when you know you're getting ill, you get bad tempered. And a fan simply wanted a signature or something. You know how you do if you can get, as you no doubt will know, you get backstage at a big gig and you want to get all the autographs and all that. So this fan just wanted to get an autograph, but Rick Wright wanted to go somewhere else pretty quickly. So he was very short with this fan. That's all. It's nothing serious, but it's just an interesting observation.
Right, because you don't hear about Richard losing it in Pink Floyd like books or anything like that. So I just found that very humorous when I read that.
Okay. Yeah, well, well, you know that you've read enough books about Floyd, no doubt, to know about all the politics and stuff of it. And from that, you could deduce that individuals would be a bit, a bit tetchy, a bit short, a bit roughed up. But that's all part. But I don't want to. I'm not speaking about that because it's not my game.
Okay.
My game is more humor. Right. Anyway, go on. Yeah.
You all, and just one last thing about the members. You briefly mentioned, and I wish it was a little bit more, that you actually had met Syd Barrett. Did you? Yeah. Because he had wandered into the studio. First of all, did you know it was him?
Only when someone said.
And
this is Syd Barrett.
Yeah. And what did you think of him?
Well, I'll tell you that what I thought of him is in those 3 lines.
So you didn't think much of him then?
Well, there wasn't anything to think. He was not in either performing or conversational mood.
Did you find yourself eventually getting along with all 4 members like equally, or was there one member who kind of always stuck out as being one that was like the most polite or easiest to get along with?
Oh well, working it out, reading the book, I was most friendly with Roger Waters. Interestingly, he would not have been the easiest to get on with. The easiest to get on with would have been Nick Mason. And I shouldn't say would have been, he was the easiest to get on with. But at that time of our individual creative explorations, individuality is not, comfortableness is not necessarily desirable. So that's why I would say that I took to Roger more because he was more on the edge, exploring. We wanted to explore more creatively.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you work with Roger Waters on really your first big project with Pink Floyd was the soundtrack to The Body. Very quickly, could you kind of relay how that whole project came to be?
Yes. I was doing a lot of film work, both documentaries for the television and starting to get into feature films a bit at that time. And this film was being made, and the producer and director, the producer asked the famous English DJ John Peel, who was hot if you want, who was hot on music at that time. And John Peel immediately recommended me. And they came to me and they said, yeah, we got this pioneering sort of documentary film that it's going to be a documentary film that goes in the cinema. We're really breaking boundaries here. And they said, but we need some songs as well. Do you do songs? And I said, certainly not. I don't do songs. But I know a man who does. And so I said, it's Roger Waters. No doubt of the Pink Floyd, I would have said. And they said, oh, great, right, okay, well, we must strike a deal. So that's how that happened. I recommended him, and we worked separately, really. As you no doubt, you'll have known that probably, that we worked separately and coming together just to do with sequences and working out mathematics and all that background stuff that you need to do to get the thing right.
Kind of a little bit of a geeky question about the body that a host had wanted me to ask you. The first words in the body soundtrack are "breathe, breathe in the air," and of course those are also the same words that begin "Dark Side of the Moon." Is that just a giant coincidence?
Well, again, you're asking me something about the Floyd's creative way. Now, I can only reply from what I know about the process of creativity generally. And I would say that if somebody does a new piece with some patterns in it that they like, in this case that line of words, then they're going to use it again. Probably, and maybe turn it backwards, maybe do, in other words, they like that form. So it is all I can say, it's very likely that Roger would have taken that on, into a few years later for that greater piece, you might say.
Mm-hmm. Well then, okay, so we move a little bit forward, and the work on the Atom Heart Mother suite, well, what will become Atom Heart Mother, begins. And again, for those who haven't had a chance to read it, but they know that you were involved, how were you approached, and why do you think that you were chosen?
We were getting, as individuals, we were getting on very well. We just fitted. It's a bit like a marriage. A good marriage is you have complementary aspects. The two people have complement each other, and that's spelt COMPLEMENT, to make a whole, to make a homogeneous being. So they were obviously, when Nick first came to see me, we got on. A similar sense of humour, I think, was one tie. Roger was, at that time, had a similar sense of humour, but his humour went off a bit later on, in about 10 years after that. And there was various different musical ties. There was Rick and I into jazz music, so we'd be around each other's places playing stuff, old and new, and it just fit. Everything fitted. Bit like, it was at that time a good jigsaw.
You mentioned in the book that at the time you said that the group was running on empty, and that's why you suggested that you were brought in. Do you suppose it's because their last few projects were soundtracks to relatively unknown movies, and their previous album Uma Guma was something else? Do you suppose that it was because of those failures that they really were kind of running on empty? Like, did you see a bit of the band?
Yeah. No, it's very simple. They were, which is all stated very clearly in the book, that they were being pushed by the management, and by which, of course, is that they were being pushed by themselves because they wanted to make it. They wanted to be well known and do a lot of work, and they'd run out. They were touring all over the place. They were in Germany, USA, France, all over the place, and I don't know how they weren't all half dead. Well, maybe they were, but that's a fact. It's just pressure. God, we were all, what were we, 20, age 25 or something. There's a limit to pushing oneself. Because you've got, traveling's not easy. Just travelling, and that's just to get to the gig. Never mind get up there and do something that captivates the crowd. It's hard work, and just again bringing me in, lightened the load.
Of course, Adam Hartmuther, The Sweet, started out as a basic piece called The Amazing Pudding that they actually had performed live in the past. First of all, just out of a humorous curiosity, why that title? Were you ever clued in on why it was called The Amazing Pudding to begin with?
No, just it's a typical Roger Waters title.
He just threw words together and it stuck.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I mean, we would, in fact, if you're sitting down in England, if you're sitting down to a meal, the pudding is in fact what you would call sweet, the last course,
mm-hmm.
or well, it depends whether you want some cheese after that or not, but the last course would be the sweet. Well, in England, quite often that's called the pudding.
Mm-hmm.
Because quite often it was it might have been rice, like rice pudding, a kind of heavy, floury, FLOUR type of dish to fill you up at the end. It kind of comes out of the Second World War, when you needed filling. There wasn't much nutrition around, so you needed filling up. So you could say, you'd sit down and this dish would be brought on, and you could quite easily say, whoa, that is an amazing pudding. So it's a perfectly ordinary phrase.
So kind of like a little double pun there, because the piece is a sweet and the pudding is what we would call in America a sweet.
Yes, and punning on the word sweet. Okay. Yes, possibly, yes.
The second question I had about The Amazing Pudding, the actual composition, is what did you think of those live recordings, since you did say that you were able to get your hands on some of them?
Yeah. Yes, there's a man in France who's got everything. He's collected all the bootlegs. I think he's got everything.
I'd like to challenge him.
Right, okay. I'll link you. I can link you later if you want. What was the question?
The question.
What was the question, man?
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the question is what did you think of those live recordings?
Oh yes, not a lot. No, I'm glad to say. Just they made a long sketch. It's almost like if you convert that into visual terms, possibly someone doing a mural, they would chalk out or use a thick pencil or something and sketch out the pattern or the shapes, the main shapes along a wall. Well, that's how I saw that. It was merely a sketch. It hadn't been filled in.
Okay. Ron, I do want to say, Ron, there are some great and beautiful photos of the band and you and everyone else in this at that time in Abbey Road Studios. Are there more pictures like that didn't make the book, or is this it?
Yes, there are, but there's nothing much. There would be variations on what's in there. You know, like, well, there were lots of that Roger silhouette type of leaning on the desk, the mixing desk. The ones that the close-ups of the boys leaning over the desk and all that, they are unique. There are no duplicates of those or variations of those. So you're not missing much.
Okay.
But there's three. I mean, there are 3 rolls. There are 3 35mm rolls of 30. I think they were 36. So there's roughly 3 times 36 shots in total. But quite a few of those were experiments by my friend, the photographer. Yeah, and they were not. They're nothing. Well, they just like trying to shoot a face through a screen, kind of like an acoustic screen kind of thing. Just experiments. They wouldn't be much use in the book.
Was it you or the photographer, or maybe both of you, who decided which photos would actually be published?
No, it was me and the publishers.
Okay.
In other words, I sent them the lot, and they picked out the one. I mean, it became obvious what would be picked out.
I do want to talk about one photo, because there's a caption of David and Nick on a mixing board, and the caption says, David and Nick, not so sure. Was there any hesitation from the band that maybe they didn't want to try this, like a suite that would take up a whole entire vinyl side, or do you think that they were like pushing for more experimental things?
Well, if you'd started at the beginning of their process, they had made the backing track of 23 minutes, so you could deduce from that they wanted to go for a whole side, right? Because they'd made that sketch that length. What I did with it, what I did in and around it, they had no idea about until the day that we started recording at Abbey Road. So those shots are really them hearing what I had done for the first time, for better or worse. They weren't going to, at that stage, they weren't going to stand up and say, we're pulling the plug on this. They wouldn't do that. They couldn't, because they didn't really know what it was at that point. It was still being formed, in the sense that because they couldn't read music and all the stuff that I had done was written in music on paper. They had to wait until it was all done. They could then have said, "We're pulling the, we're going to pull the plug," but they didn't, because it obviously was of sufficient interest to let it go.
There's some really fascinating studio information and a lot of pictures as well about how the suite grew and grew. At the beginning of the book, you do acknowledge a lot of the people who did help with the research and the tracking all this information. Did you find yourself going back to these sources more than you thought that you would?
Just a minute, I'm turning it. I've got the book here. I'm just turning up. You were talking about. You were referring to the acknowledgements.
Yes, sir.
Yes, indeed. There could have been a few more in there. There were one or two others, because you always think after something's finished, you think of something else. No, I think no. That's a pretty good list, but there isn't much. No, the only real extra research was my son Joe, who, in going to the newspaper library and finding that, getting the actual newspaper from which the title came, getting that out and getting good copies and all the rest of it. There's very little reference to anyone else. Not to do with the actual making of the writing, because that was just solitary sweating in the studio in May of 1970, and just getting with a pencil sharpener and some paper, and just get down to it,
Season's greetings, listeners.
This is Triple Threat with a special holiday announcement.
The end of 2013 is upon us, and we have had an amazing half a year.
We started this show back in September of this year, and we've saved the best for last.
As 2013 comes to a close, we're going to be releasing 3 back-to-back episodes covering the 3 big albums that you see on our website and our profile picture. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles,
Tommy by The Who,
and The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd.
This way we can end the year with a bang and go out on a big note. No pun intended.
So check out our next 3 episodes as we ring out 2013 with these 3 big albums to cap off a great first year.
Thank you so much for listening to Triple Threat, and have a happy holiday season.
Bye-bye.
I don't want to give, if you don't mind, Ron, I don't want to give too much away about how the song came together, because I do want people to actually have something to read.
Good man. What a splendid idea. Yes, you're quite right. Yes.
So I want to just kind of dispel something real quickly. Many fans do believe that about 17 minutes into the song, there's a voice that says, "Here's a loud announcement," and then there's a voice that says, "Silence in the studio." And many people believe that is you. Is it?
No.
That's not you.
What was the first?
The first statement was, "Here's a loud announcement."
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure who that is, but I'm pretty sure that Silence in the Studio is Nick Mason. Okay. You see, they put that on separately later. But it really was this thing of collaboration. When we'd done all the recording, all the stuff that I had written, they had still to take some things and in the sound effects section, the excursion section, and put new things in, just touching it. It's very like that thing of the painter. In fact, Leonardo da Vinci, and painting a ceiling in Italy, in one of the chapels in Italy or something, would have done exactly the same. He would have sketched it out. He would have got someone up a ladder, say, "Go and fill that in," and then he would stand back and look at it, and he'd go up there himself and touch in some other final details. This is quite, this is how it works in sound, and I think there's a good parallel with that kind of mural painting.
You do say that before the suite actually had a name, the band did perform it on BBC John Peel's Sunday concert in front of a live audience. What was that experience like?
Yeah, for me then, exhilarating, because I had done the work. and I was done. The recording was finished in the EMI, so I was just sitting back, and I don't know what. Yeah, I mean, simply that. I'm trying to think of an analogy, but I don't think we need to have an analogy. It's just the relief of having done something. You know, all through my creative career, in some ways, I mean, I'm being a bit flippant here, but the only thing I really enjoy is getting on the train and going home. In other words, having done it. You know, the pain, there's an awful lot of pain and nerves and pain leading up to doing things, and an enormous relief to have done something. So that was an example of, there would be a little bit of nerves on my part because they'd still got synchronization problems because of the conducting. Because the Floyd weren't used to having a conductor in front of them, and the musicians were not used to having a loud rock band blasting out behind them. So the tying up of all the disparate elements was still a little fragile, shall we say. But apart from that, it was good fun.
Mm. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and especially creating creating the title in that very studio, the BBC studio.
You couldn't have picked a more perfect segue, Ron. I was about to say, shortly after, you actually named the sweet Atom Heart Mother, and I'm sure many fans who are going to be listening are going to wonder, how did you pick that name?
Well, there's the story. I mean, you don't now to take your phrase. I don't want to tell too much because it's all in the book, but it came from the London Evening Standard newspaper that was lying on a desk, and I said, well, they wanted a title. They needed a title, something. Everybody wanted a title because they had to do something with it. And I said to Roger, can you pick that newspaper up there? You'll find a title in there, because I'm into that kind of chance. This is the sort of more the John Cage idea of chance. Things happen if you just push the boat out a bit. You know, have a go, as they say. I said, you find the title, and so he flicked through and leafed through the paper, and then came to this title about this woman, the first woman to have a pacemaker fitted. It wasn't called a pacemaker then, but that's what it was. And it was Atom Heart Mother. And then, amazingly, the next edition on the same day, a later edition of the same paper, had prophetically Atom Heart Mother named. So that was it. I mean, it was perfect. But how good was that for chance? That's it.
You've also you also go on to say that since the release of the album, you heard side 2 of the album, which you clearly state at the beginning of the book you had no involvement in, correct?
Correct.
What was your overall impression of side 2 of the album?
Well, again, I just touched on that in the book. How did I put it? It wasn't a comfortable balance of pieces, but they were a living record of the time, a bit like a photograph album. And there's value in all the pieces, but the psychedelic breakfast one seemed a bit, from me as a composer, seemed a bit rambling. That was all. Not quite tied together.
Have your thoughts about side 2 of the album changed since then?
No.
No. Okay.
I don't listen to it.
Okay, all right. Well,
Listen to it. I'm still on Louis Armstrong's Potato Head Blues of 1927. I think that's you should go and listen to that. That's form for you, man.
yeah.
Tell you. Yeah, okay.
Fast forward a couple of years, Ron, because I don't want to get into the future comments that the band said later about Adam Hartmother, because that is something people can read, and also I'm sure it's something personal. So I really don't want to get into it.
No. Well, maybe you later on you can write the book.
But I want to skip ahead to 2008. You resurrected Adam Hartmother to be performed with David Gilmour. For those, because we do have people who were alive at that time, and they have heard that live performance. But for those who maybe don't know the backstory about it, how did that come about?
There's a festival, a sort of arts festival, and not specifically music fest in London, called the Chelsea Arts Festival. Obviously, being done in the area of Chelsea, and someone who was connected with the committee asked me if we could do Adam Hartmother, and I said, yeah, but that's only going to be, maximum 30 minutes of a show. So I said, I'll only do it if I do the first half of my stuff solo, and then we'll do the second half. Will be the big Adam Hartmother, and they agreed. So that's what we did, and I extended Adam Hartmother in two places for that show, and it seemed to improve it actually. And that was it. And also I wrote extra pieces because I don't often get the chance to have 10 brass players or a choir of 20 or something available. So since they were available, I thought I'll give them something. I'll give them something to do, and I wrote new pieces to insert in the first part, which was my solo bit, and that all went off very well. It was a good show. In fact, there were all these Floyd fans hanging over the balcony with their portable digital recording equipment and videos and stuff, and I think some of the bits of it were out on the net within hours.
I can bet, yeah.
Yeah, not very. I mean, the performance had its faults, but the general impression was good. The piece was still there, coming through.
Do you think that maybe because of this performance, maybe I don't mean to sound rude a little bit, but do you think the piece was a little bit more socially accepted, because it wasn't? It was kind of. The album did make it to #1 in the UK. It became Pink Floyd's first #1 album. But do you think that maybe because of this performance, in such an incredible performance, by the way, that you think maybe the piece was more, like I said, socially acceptable?
I don't know. I think it had got more socially acceptable long before that, just because of the people new generations even buying the record in whatever form, whether they were vinyl freaks and getting it through eBay or digi freaks. And anyway, what's the capacity of the Cadogan Hall? It's about 800. Well, that's not going to... There's not a lot of the society in London in that hall. 800 on 2 nights is 1,600 people total. So I don't see how you can develop that social acceptability theory there.
I do want to ask you some quick questions, Ron, about the book in general, if you don't mind. This first question is from one of my hosts. He asks, what was your favorite part of the book to write?
Oh, God. I think the analysis, when I'm just looking at that, just scanning through, pudding stirred, oven ready. Yeah, the analysis of doing it, because I'd never actually sat down and thought about that before. So I had to go through the thing and get the original score out, even not just the original pen inked score, but there was a pencil score before that, and there were slight changes, just the odd note here and there, and I had to get all that out and look at it and remember, what I was try to remember what I was doing at the time. So that was it. That was interesting. But there was no part of the writing of the book that was, putting this another way, there was no part of the writing that was more difficult. It all seemed to just fall out, not fall out, but pour out. It came naturally.
Another question is, would you ever consider possibly doing an audiobook version of this book so that people could possibly hear your such the witty remarks that you make?
Well, yes. Yeah, I could consider that. It's not been... Thank you for that new suggestion. Yeah. It's possible. Yes. Okay. It certainly would be possible. In fact, actually, I had thought before doing this book, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, of doing an interview with myself, 2 different voices, doing that, so that what would have come out of that would be a lot of the, as you said, I think you said witty statements and funny bits, my particular phrasing. Yeah, well, it's possible.
You've kept up your relations with Nick and David over the years. Nick, of course, wrote the foreword of the book, and you obviously performed with David in 2008. Do you still keep in touch with him?
Yeah, but not on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. We all live. They're all multi-millionaires, and we live in different strati, shall we say? If you go up in a hot air balloon, you go through different currents of air, different places up in the sky. Well, we're all on different platforms, really, if you're mixing metaphors there a bit. And I really am not. I've said it at the beginning. I'm not a rock man. I'm not in that world. I'm glad to say I'm not in that world. I'm in my world. So we meet. Nick's got an open invitation to come come here. We've got a very big field that he could land his helicopter in if he wants. I'll go out and pin down a few sheets so that he can see where he's coming to. But that's it, really. And David's not far down the road. Well, in our terms, it's not far down the road. He's about 30 miles down, not far away. But we might get together a bit more, but I'm not pushing it.
Well, if you want to get them all together and call us, we wouldn't object to it.
Yes, nice try.
Hey, it can only hope.
Yeah, I know.
Did you also keep up your relationship with Richard Wright up until his passing?
No, I didn't. I didn't read, but I think if he was living now, I think I would certainly be communicating with him. Yes.
And what about you and Roger? How are you and him?
Oh, zero. I'm not going. We're not going into that. But no. Just he became, for me, he became too much, and you can interpret too much how you like.
We also wanted to be able to ask you. I'm sure that you've been aware in the last few years. In 2011, the entire Pink Floyd catalog was remastered, and they put out also remastered and expanded versions of Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, and The Wall with bonus tracks. If we ever were to see an expanded version of Atom Heart Mother, the album, and by the way, this is a good idea if you want to suggest it to your friends at Abbey Road, but if there ever was to be an expanded version of Atom Heart Mother, what would you suppose what would be on it?
The extended, certainly I would strongly recommend the extended version. For various reasons. One, probably the main one, it was because that section J, the funky section, was recorded wrong, and that is all. The details of that are described in the book. So that when we did it in 2008, we did it both ways. We did it the right way and the wrong way, and that's a good idea. That worked. That would be it, really. It would just be a completely. Well, I think we should do a new recording. I've said that. Do it. In fact, I think the ideal would be with an Afro-American classical brass section in New York. That would be the ideal one for me. Because they got that extra they know about punching the rhythm and proper playing.
Do you actually have copies of the tapes that you worked on, or are they all locked away somewhere?
They're locked away. They were in the bin. Well, obviously now because of all this history stuff, but I know I threw that away. I'm damn sure I threw it away. There's a 5% chance that it's on the inside of a 10.5-inch metal spool somewhere in my studio, but I think I just got rid of it because it's like at that time, because I was doing so much other work, that I didn't want to clutter my studio with old bits, because it was just a sketch on which to work for me at the time. But now I would be glad to find it again.
So basically, you're saying that when you were writing the book, you actually did not go back and actually listen to your old tapes?
There was only one tape. You used the plural there, but there was only one tape. It was the backing. It was the backing tape, that the 23-minute joined up backing tape. I can tell you, it was on a 7-inch plastic spool, and 7.5 inches per second. But I'll tell you, I think it's gone.
We have excuse me. We have two final questions for you, Ron. Before we started the interview, you mentioned Pete Townsend, and you do mention him. You do mention him briefly in your book. How exactly did you meet him? And
similar through I don't know, being performing around and knowing a lot of different artists. In fact, as it happens, since you triggered something here, the photographer of all the main pictures in the book, Richard Stanley, was a particular friend of Pete Townsend's, and I think there's something about Richard introducing Pete and me. I think, I'm pretty sure that was how it happened. And again, we just got on. And also, not just that, but I was married at that time, and Pete was married, and we got on as two couples. So they would come down here in Sussex, where we still live, for a day or two, and just sit in the garden or whatever, or go for a walk, do gentle things. It's not all tearing about, breaking amplifiers.
And of course, you played on his album that was dedicated to Meher Baba. Did you and him share the same beliefs?
Oh no. No, I thought Meher Baba was a bit of a joke. To the extent of the title of that of the piece that I did on that album, with a smile up his nose, they entered. I was definitely not into that, but later on, I found a philosophy that was close to the way I thought, and that philosophy is Taoism. And the man that put me on to Taoism was the Chinese philosopher Lin Yutang, who actually was born in China. He lived and worked in New York, and in 1937 he wrote an amazing book called The Importance of Living, and I still get it out and refresh myself with it, because it's very straight and fun. So that's my, if we're looking at spiritual influences, that's my game.
Our final question for you, Ron, because we're gonna wrap things up a little bit. I did have a friend who I asked if he had any questions for you, and we kind of stole all of his questions that we had thought of ourselves. So he did want to ask you, just because he wanted to get your random opinion on this, if you don't mind. It's kind of a bit of a random question. I probably should have asked it at the beginning to kind of like loosen up a little bit. But if you were to have a superpower, what would it be?
Superpower.
Hey, he asked the question.
Yeah. I think to have 6 fingers on each hand to play more piano. There you are.
Do you have a favorite superhero, if any?
No, I'm not into that. I'm into ordinary things.
Okay, because this crazy man has a belief that that Aquaman is the greatest superhero of all time, and it's my job to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
So
you've got the start. You've got the start of some backing there. Yeah. No, that's another world. I mean, our youngest son Fraser is a prolific cartoon artist. So he's into that kind of, he's not into the superhero idea, but exaggerated beings. He's into, and I'm into exaggerated beings. That's called an exaggerated being for me. Actually, is a composition.
Okay, Ron, so we're going to wrap things up a little bit here. We just want to say once again that your book is called The Flaming Cow, The Making of Pink Floyd's Atom Heart Mother on the History Press. We thank you so much for coming on, and if you ever want to come on again, we'd be happy to talk to you.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Before you go, we just want to ask, are you going to be doing any promoting for the book, like going on tour or giving any talks, something that we can promote?
Nothing is planned. I mean, to me, it's that kind of what's the word? Initiative. That initiative would have to come from publishers or distributors, not from me. I mean, I've been talking to you just now. Then, because you wanted to talk, you wanted to have an interview, so I talk. But I can't go around saying, "Do you want an interview?" I'll wait for someone wants to do something. I'll consider it and say yes or no. That's the way it works. Yeah, well, this is indeed. I think this is usually Ron Geesin, still trying to find out who he is, making stuff, making art now and again, including writing books. The Flaming Cow is one. The history of adjustable spanners will follow. And it's been very good talking to you over there. It'll be good morning to you and good afternoon to me.
Yes, it will, Ron. We thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
It's a pleasure.
We wish you best of luck.
Thank you very much. Crack on.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
And that's our exclusive interview with Pink Floyd author and collaborator Ron Geesin. We want to thank Ron and his publicists for this great opportunity, which all of us had a fun time preparing for and putting together. If you would like to purchase your copy of Ron's book, The Flaming Cow, The Making of Pink Floyd's Atom Heart Mother, you can look for a link to buy it on our website at mixcloud.com/triplethreat or on Ron's official website, www.rongeesin.com. And if you have comments about the show, you can leave them on our website at www.mixcloud.com/triplethreat and let us know what you think of Ron's book and our interview. Once again, thank you to our very special guest, Ron Geesin, and thank you all for listening to Triple Threat. See you all next time.
All right, you've got a picture up here of bits of. You've got Sgt. Pepper and a grid. What's that grid? That's from the Who album, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Are you playing Name That Album?
Am I what?
That's Tommy by The Who. That's the cover.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right, yeah. Well, Pete Townsend was an old friend, but I haven't seen him for years.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you do mention him in his book. So if you don't mind, later on, I do have a question about that.
Yeah. Okay. Right now, so there's no picture of you there.
No, sir, because this is because we are a team, and we feel like if we put a picture of just one of us, it would make us look kind of bad.
All right. Okay. So are all three of you on?
No, sir. The other two couldn't make it, but they they send their best regards.
Okay, marvelous.
Yeah, but we did all contribute to the question, so I do have some of theirs with me.
Right. Okay. So are you at the university?
Yes, sir.
Stephen F. Austin State University. Marvelous.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And what are you doing there?
Right now I'm sitting in a chair.
Yeah. Okay.
No, what I'm doing here, sir, is I'm a big fan of music, so I study the music and radio as well as theater stuff as well, and it makes me kind of sad that there's not a lot of people except for my two hosts who really get how cool this was, this opportunity to speak to you. So we just want to say, before we say it and we gush all over, thank you so much for taking your time to talk to us.
Well, thank you, but don't go overboard on. I'm just an ordinary human being. I've had a few crazy notions, but I'm just, this afternoon I was painting shelves. I'm an ordinary fellow. Okay.
Right. Well, don't worry.
Anyway, let's crack on.
Yes. And the very last thing that we'd like to ask you to do is to give our show a shout out, if you don't mind, where you could say, "Hi, this is Ron Geesin, author of The Flaming Cow, and you're listening to Becca, Garrett, and Tom on Triple Threat. I just sent you a message with our names, so you can hopefully get it right."
Right. Yeah. Is Becca male or female?
She's female.
She's female, right? Is that a Rebecca?
Yes.
Yeah, Rebecca.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, good. Well done, Rebecca. Becky. Usually that is with a Y, but Becca's all right. That's all right. You can have that.